coming to you from Lighting in Los Angeles. How are you? Welcome to today's Tech Talks webinar, where we will kick off with store options. As you can see, I decided they're actually kind of all answered in this nice knowledge base that we wrote. You can always get to the knowledge base via support.actlighting.com. You could also go to applighting.com and click on the support tab. It will take you to our support hub as well. I'm joined today by my colleague, Kat Covell.
Hey, Will Murphy.
Yeah. It's been a little while since we've done a webinar.
A little bit of time.
It's been a very busy spring, to say the least. But as you know, we're doing one today, and we have another one scheduled for next Thursday, a little earlier in the day. Well, thanks for all the questions. I hope you've been enjoying the Tech Talks playlist. Send it to your friends and learn how to use GrandMA 2 better than you already do. So why don't we get started? We're looking at GrandMA 2 software. Should probably get my face out of the way, put that down in the corner like I usually do. So store options would be accessible by pressing and holding the store key. That means in the moment that you're ready to store something, you could change your store options, or store options are user dependent as confirmed because they're under the user tab. That means every user in the system can have their own unique set of store options. So if I wanted to change the defaults, maybe the easiest way is to start by going into setup and go to the store options. This might be something where you walk in to a news show, or you're working on your buddy's Showfile, or you know what you want and you're starting a new user profile. Come in here and make the changes. As soon as you make the changes, they're automatically saved as the default, which is a general rule. Anytime you have a window open with an X on the top right, you notice there's no Save as Default button. These kind of things is just if there's no Save as Default, as soon as you make the changes, that becomes the new default setting. So we're going to try to go through all these. Keep in mind, not only are they outlined in our knowledge base, they're actually outlined very well in the help manual as well. So if you go to help.malighting.com or help and the number 2.malighting.com, you will find the help manual, and you can get a description of what all these settings do. During this webinar, I might actually refer to these to remind myself of a few things. But anyway, kind of start at the bottom left is where we normally describe this. Your data source. That means what is the store method referencing? What data is it referencing when it's going to store the data? Well, it could reference a programmer. It might reference the output layer, or it would reference the DMX input. DMX in may come via network protocols such as ArtNet input or SACN input, or any DMX port in the system could also be an input. So there is an XLR input male DMX port on the back of the console. Well, in fact, in the GrandMA 2 system, any DMX port can be an in or an out. How do I do that? I just change it to an input. So now, if you plug data DMX into port XLRC on the back of the console and feed some DMX into that, it's going to get merged with MA universe number 3, and that's where the DMX in option might come from if you were to choose store DMX in. Now, if you want to see what's actually getting stored somewhere, maybe I will open a tracking sheet. We will select Executor 1, and I will grab this fixture, put it at 100%, and I will say store please. And what happens is the store options by default are reference the programmer and store the active value. So I would oops that. So if I press and hold my store key, I can get a temporary store options window. Programmer, that would be the red text. And any of the gray text as well would be what's in your programmer. but it's going to grab the value that's actually active. And what that means is it has a red background. That's why when I hit please, it only stores that dimmer as full. Now, if I'm going to reference a programmer and I choose all, and we say please, I'll create a second queue, and now my entire programmer, everything is at default, that's everything. That's why everything turned red to indicate it was just stored. It's a good way to know that you just stored some data, that it goes into a deactivated state. And by the way, Kat, if I say anything confusing, just cut me off. Tell me to re-clarify. I'm going kind of quick here.
Yeah, just slow it down a little. That's all I would say. Just
going too fast.
Yep.
Sorry.
Your mouse moves at like lightning speed.
Oh, that's true. I should slow my mouse down. So I stored all in that case, which captured everything in my programmer. The nice thing is I can always oops that, and I would oops that last one as well. My other option is data source might be output. What might I use that for? One thing I've done in the past actually is I've captured effect values. So I've done like a dimmer sine wave, and then I've paused it at a speed of 0. And if I jump back to my fixture sheet, if I go to the output layer, I actually see I've got some kind of spread out values here as a result of the effect. Now, the actual dimmer value layer is not active, so if I double click this Presettype button, my value layer is going to be activated as well, or it should have been. Okay, sorry, I had to open the calculator. I know it says out here, but if you go to output layer at the bottom of your fixture sheet, this is the actual output layer. Now, I'm going to store these values. Notice the value layer has them at 0. So if I were to store a queue from the programmer, it would store everything at 0, but instead I'm going to try to capture the output. I hit please. We'll jump over to screen 3 where my layout view is, and you see I get that range of output values. So I know people have asked us in the past, how do I get a kind of really random set, so-called random set of values for dimmer or position or anything? And actually my little trick for them is, grab an effect, let it run, then pause it, activate the value layer, doesn't matter what those values are, and then use the store options to actually grab the output layer, which is manipulated by the effect, and then you get that random array of values. Did that make sense to you, Kat?
Yeah.
Okay, hopefully.
I've only gone through that before. This really works well with color effects.
Yeah.
This is a place where I've seen it a bunch.
It's a cool little trick. So a lot of people ask what I would use that output data source for. Well, output can be a combination of programmer and executor values and running effects and even DMX merging. So if you want to capture kind of all of that, you would use output instead of programmer. And then DMX input, pretty straightforward. Whatever values are coming into the system are what you're going to capture, regardless of what the MA is telling those channels to do. The actual use selection, like I showed you what active does, that's with the red background, or all grabs everything. Some very useful ones is active for selected. So I might find myself in a situation where, I've put these lights at full and I've put these lights at 50, and I put these lights in, we have some colors here in the list, so they're in cyan. Maybe you want to build your cues in a particular order, so I'll select Executor 2. Maybe I want the wash lights to come up first, So this is where I might use active for selected. So I hold my store key, I say active for selected, and I hit please. It only stores the wash lights because those are selected in yellow. And it only pulls the active data, so it doesn't take all the values. That other option is all for selected. Next might be these fixtures, so I might still use active for selected. If I'm going to do this a lot, I might save this as a default. So I do my settings, save as default, and I hit please, create second queue. Now I want these two to be the next queue, and I say store please. So now my new store default is active for selected because I saved that as the default. And the last one, which is fairly new. So all these options so far have been around for a long time. The last one, store look, has been around since 3.1.
3.1?
I think, yeah, 3.1. This one is actually very handy, particularly for TV and theater, in my opinion. Of course, can work anywhere, but its objective is to store what you see on stage and make sure that every time you play back that cue, it recalls the stage as exactly how it looked. So, why might this matter? Well, I have an executor here that I'm going to run, and we're just going to use our wireframe view to kind of look at what it's doing. Oops, I want to turn off everything first. There we go. So maybe we go into Q3. And I have these lights on. Okay. Now, I might add some other lights to the look. So I might grab my washes, and I didn't run my handy macro that puts my presets in place. So don't mind me why I did that. I'm going to put these washes, say, on the singer, and we're going to make them red. And now the look of the stage, remember, it's what you see. The look of the stage is wash lights in red and alpha spots in purple. But if you look at the fixture sheet, the only stuff that's active is my alpha washes. Store look captures everything on that stage required to create this look, including the fixtures at 0. So, to understand that, we're going to select a new executor because I might be creating a look using multiple executors plus programmer values. I'm going to select executor 5, and I'm going to open delete that one. We'll open a tracking sheet, and I'm going to go store. We want to store a look. Maybe save this as my default, and say please. Now what that did is, you see the alpha washes are obviously open, but you get all these extra values. Okay, now this is a little hard to see this in a tracking sheet because it's a horizontal sort of view. Now I'm going to open a sequence content sheet, which shows me what's stored in the queue. So I just stored executor 5, 1.5. Hit go. Now let's take a look what happened. The alpha washes are stored with open in red, plus it captured the pan tilt values, plus all the wheels are open. I had to capture that in order to recreate that exact look. We don't want to add a Gobo wheel earlier in the list that interferes with what this looks like. Then it also grabbed the alpha spots in full, in purple, plus all the wheels in open. Now the rest of these fixtures, notice the rest of these fixtures, the beams, the dimmers, etc., all captured at closed. Well, since those are actually closed, there's no point in capturing all the additional data because all that matters is that the light is off. Nothing else matters. So that's the objective of store look. This can make it very easy to build cue lists, because if you have a designer that just like sees stuff on stage and you know he always wants his cues to look the same, you don't want to have to think about tracking. Store look is very handy for that. Just captures what you see on stage. Very handy with TV. Sometimes TV jumps all over the place, so they like to build their cues, and when they recall that scene or that shot, etc. They want to make sure everything looks that way, regardless of what combination of executors and programmer and merging, etc. it took to get there. Okay, very handy function. I think we probably explained that in here. Oh, these are store options from if you're building macros, actually. And oh no, the help manual's not updated. Well, good news, a new help manual is coming in the next software, so stay tuned for that. That's why we're doing a webinar, so you guys can learn this stuff. Since we're on the topic of store look, another fairly new store option is tracking shields. So this gets into the tracking concept. We could probably spend days talking about tracking. I'm going to try to summarize it as best I can. We will select a new executor. We'll do executor 6 and page 2. Let me open a small fixture sheet here. We're going to do 101 at 100 in red. And I'm not going to use look in this case. And we're going to just store active. So it's just full in red. And then I'm going to take it out. We'll store that as the next one, next queue. Now you might have a few additional queues here. Maybe another light turns on. What we're really caring about is fixture 101, but I'm just going to store some dummy queues here. And then fixture 101 is going to come back on and maybe point somewhere else. It's going to point on the guitar. So we store that. So what you're going to see is that 101 is at full, and then it goes out, but the red is tracking. Now, it's generally the programmer's job to be aware of what's happening with the tracking, because what will end up happening with your designer is that you're sitting here in Q4, and your designer realizes they need a fixture. Well, 101 is off right now, so he wants to use 101. So what you do is you grab 101, you bring it to full, and you point it on the keyboard.
You're in channel.
Oh, was I in channel?
Yeah.
Oops, my default was channel. So fixture 101 at full, you put it on the keyboard, and you might change it to yellow. Now, I'm going to update this Q4. So we do that, and now suddenly when your designer gets to Q8, so you might go, let's just pretend we go to the next queue, right? We take this fixture 101 goes out, and we update the same Q4. Okay, cool, yeah, but the problem is, you see here, when you get to Q8, it's in yellow. Me, the programmer, I was not doing a good job of paying attention to tracking. Tracking shield allows you to not have to worry about it. So we're going to oops a couple times, and I'll show you how tracking shield would have protected queue number 8. So by oopsing, I came back to the state of 101 in yellow, on the keyboard, in yellow, at full. And we want this to happen in Q4. So I'm pressing and hold my store key. I need to enable tracking shield, and I'm going to say Q4, please. And even I get the tracking shield option with the pop-up here, even though I did it ahead of time. Now, multiple ways to get to the same option. And we'll merge. Now take a look at what happened at Q8. Q8 is actually protected, because what tracking shield is doing, we don't really intend for you to think too hard about tracking shield. You just have to trust it. Tracking shield is protecting the queues that were already built. So it's essentially protecting Q8 that was already on with a tracked with a tracked red value. It has protected it by hard storing the tracked values that are required to recreate that look. So a lot of people, if they just want to do some very quick programming, or they don't want to think too hard about what they see on stage, what's active, they don't want to worry too much about tracking, what they do is they go into their store options and they say this and this. They use store look and tracking shield and they leave it on, and it means that when you store the queue, it's going to look exactly how you intend for it to look when you store it. And then tracking shield is going to preserve any queues that have tracked data that are used to create that color or that gobo. Now what that does mean is that I'm using one queue examples, but let's say I'm doing this and I expect it to track over a certain range of queues. You are going to have to be mindful of saying, store queue 4 through 6, for example. So you would define your range. So then all you're really thinking about is, I don't have to worry about tracking. I don't have to worry about what data is active or not active. It's just the console, the software is going to capture that information. All I have to be mindful of is, where does this look start? Q4. Where does it end? Q6, for example.
And just to kind of also clarify, since that seemed long-winded, the .2 help manual actually outlines this exact queue sequence, this exact scenario. Very, very great. I mean, it was built for .2, therefore the manual explains it very good, actually, very well. And you can actually recreate the queue list from there. So if you do have questions about tracking shield, I would totally read up on .2. It's gonna translate to MA2.
Definitely. Yeah, what is tracking is the .2 page on what is tracking is what kind of goes into this tracking shield concept, if you're looking for another source to explain that. Right. Additional options that do exist have to do with presets. So preset filter says if I'm storing to a position pool, only store position values. If I'm storing to a color pool, only store color values. So I think there was a question of, can I store focus information to my Gobo pool?
There was a question about that.
Right. So yeah, you just have to turn off the preset filter. So in this instance, if I grab my alpha spot and I put this gobo and I put this focus value and I have the dimmer at 50, if I go store, turn off the preset filter, notice I get this little kind of these boxes at the bottom. These little boxes correlate with the preset types that you see right here. So the first box, dimmer was active. I turned off the the preset filter, so all active data got stored to that preset, which includes dimmer, which is why it's in white. There's no position, then there's gobo, then there's focus. So be mindful of that. You can't just necessarily turn off the preset filter and have the software magically know what you intended to store there. Maybe this is where I can show you the next step of jumping into your, not only turning this off, but then jumping into your store filter and saying, I want to store gobo, and then scroll down to focused information. So now I've only enabled focus and gobo information. This filter applies to queues or presets. Be mindful of that. When I store that, I get dimmer stays active, gobo, and focus information are stored. If you've ever seen that at key flashing, the reason it's flashing at you is because you have the filter enabled. You have an active filter. You can actually get this verified with the filter pool. Also, this green line is not here. Now, currently at key is flashing. If I want to go back to the all filter, I just tap on that, and now my filter is restored. Furthermore, that's what this little message center icon is telling you. It's a little funnel symbol is the filter is applied. So that store filter is very handy. Remember, if you want to store data to a preset pool that's outside that preset type, you also additionally have to disable your preset filter. Now, presets, selective, global, universal, preset type, default. I'm not going to go through this in this webinar because we already have a webinar that talks about this. Preset Manager, which was introduced in version 3.1. If you go to our Tech Talks page, give that a watch. It goes over the difference between selective, global, and universal. I think there's even a knowledge base article about those. Right? Kat, do you remember? I think there was a knowledge base about it. It's in the help manual. Allow embedded, not used too often, but you know what? I will relate it to this example that we're already talking about here. You want to store focus information into your Gobo pool, but is that really the best place to store it? Maybe not. Each his own, each programmer is different. What some people will do is they will actually have the focus pool, so they will create, focus values. So we call that 20, and we store that there. Did not store that. There we go. So focus value of 20 is there, and we label that, and then 45 is going to store there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to have the Gobo preset reference this focus preset, aka it would be embedded. Okay, so what that means is that if I have this Gobo at a focus of 20, the first approach is to turn this off and store that here. Now what that does is that the Gobo's, this preset is not referencing that preset. If I right click to edit, I can see that focused is just a hard value in this preset. If I want this preset to reference another preset, that's known as embedded. Ugh. Hit the wrong key, sorry there. So we're going to delete that. I'm going to deactivate dimmer. Now what's going to happen? This Gobo, this focus preset of 20, I'm going to hold store, I'm going to allow embedded, and then store this Gobo preset. And now you get the little E, okay? And the little cyan number 1 is still in this preset because what is actually happening is Gobo, maybe I should start from scratch just so you guys can believe me. If I double tap this, it does not work. Oh. Remember, I forgot to disable the preset filter. So we should try this again. Okay, Fixture 101, this Gobo, this focus preset. Like I said, not too many people use embedded because it can get a little complex. And like I said, turn off the preset filter, and there we go. Okay, now we can try to look at this example. So, close that. Double click this, you see Gobo is referencing Gobo preset 3.15. Focus is referencing Gobo preset 3.15. This is expected. The way that you would actually see the embedded reference is you right click to edit, and now I can see that focus is actually coming from preset 6.8, which is the value of 20. So if you don't want to actually hard store your focus values into the Gobo pool, you could use embedded. I know sometimes people will use the all pool where they will, tap position, tap Gobo, tap focus, tap color, and then store into the all pool, but allow embedded, so the original preset, so that all preset is still referencing the original. I know another example is people will create an all band position preset that actually references the guitar, the singer, and the keyboard. This is like the all band look, which is some lights here, some lights on the guitar, some on the singer, some on the keyboard. Well, everywhere in the show, that they reference all bands, they want to make sure that those lights have already been adjusted before guitar, singer, and keyboard. Therefore, at the start of the day, all they have to do is update guitar, singer, and keyboard, then the all band automatically knows where to point. It's easy to understand because cues reference presets. Now imagine presets referencing other presets. If your brain can wrap around that, go ahead and use it. If it's confusing, I don't think you should use it.
That's what the all preset is for.
Yeah, that's my opinion. Overwrite and merge, I think those are pretty straightforward. Oh, I didn't mention keep activation. If you want to use, when you store data to a preset, it normally deactivates the values. See, let's go back to turn that off. So I'll just say, this fixture, Gobo, that. When I store that, it deactivates. Keep activation would keep that value activated. It can be kind of a shortcut. If you're on the fly making presets and cues, you might use keep activation because then you can avoid the step of having to tap that preset again. It just stays active so you can store the cue. Every time you store a cue, it's always going to deactivate. Keep activation is only for when you're storing presets. So overwrite, merge, those are pretty straightforward. Let's look at release real quick. We have to look at a tracking sheet for that. So let's select executor 10. Let's put this at 50. We're going to store that to executor 9. I'm going to go executor 9. Okay, so that's running at 50%. And then I'm going to put that at 75%, store that on executor 10. And we're going to go executor 10. And then we put that at 25. And we store. And then we put that at 0. And we store. Okay. I just need to change some options here so that these executors keep running, because the idea that we're going for. Now what happens? You have this executor running at 50%. As soon as you hit go on this executor, Q1, right? Flight's at 75%. Then we'd hit go again, the light is at 25%, then it's out. In the next queue on executor 10, let's say I want to release control of fixture 101. What does that mean? It means this executor does not control that fixture anymore, therefore it goes back to being controlled by executor 9. That is what a release value is. There are two ways to do this. I could open the calculator, input a release value, and store that to Q4. Or I could just activate this at whatever value I want, and that's not what I meant to do. Clear the screen. And I could go store release, please. And what it does is it takes anything active in any attribute that's active in my programmer and stores a release value. Now what that means is, let's see, we'll just clear out. So it's out right now. When I hit go, see how it releases control back to executor 9, which is at 50%. Same exact rules apply for remove. Now in that case, I activated the value, I chose release in the store options menu. I can turn this, I'm going to turn this around. So for my remove value, let's say I don't want to choose both of those. I'm just going to add 102 to this queue list. Store. All right. Let's say I accidentally added 102 to this queue list in Q5. I didn't mean to do that. Another approach might be 102, remove, store, Q5, merge, and it gets removed. Because if you input a remove or release value, you have to merge it to the queue. If you instead have just chosen an arbitrary random value, you have to actually choose the remove button or the release button. And you see how I removed it from Q2, so it went back to a tracked value of 75. Cool. And then what's this final example? Status merge. Status merge. Status merge says grab the status, aka the current outputted values of the selected executor plus any active programmer values and merge them to a queue. Why might I do that? Maybe big long theater queue list. Designer says, hey, go to Q2. Let's pretend I'm just working on this executor now. Designer says go to Q2. I go to Q2. Designer really likes this look, but for Q6, he wants the alpha beams to be in red. Okay, so I grab my alpha beams, make them red. Maybe I put them on the drums. So he's like, yeah, I want Q6 to actually be these alpha spots in purple plus the changes I made. Instead of having to remember to activate your alpha spots, you could just use store merge. Status merge. So we do status merge. Please. Did that work? Maybe it was supposed to be hard values, not tracked values. Nope, that did work. They're in purple now with hard stored values, plus the alpha beams are in red. Yes, so hopefully you caught it. It's of whatever you see on stage that's being controlled by the current selected executor, plus your active changes are captured, referenced, and stored to your status merge queue, which can be the next queue, or maybe you're merging to a current queue. Up to you. That is the gist of the store options menu. How about some questions?
Sure.
God, it takes all day.
Yeah, you were just kind of going there. I like this one. How would I store all except, i.e. store everything except for my hazer fader that is up at 100 currently?
That's probably where I would use the invert keyword of the console. So I'm assuming you're going to store active data, or maybe you're doing store all, but this is where you're going to want to reference selection. So you just said you want everything except your hazer. I don't have a hazer patch in this show, but just say I want everything except Fixture 108. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab Fixture 108, and then I'm going to use this invert keyword, invert, which happens to be in my show file as a programming macro called invert. When I hit invert, please, notice how my fixture sheet now has everything. I'm going to turn fixture sort off, everything selected but 108. And I press and hold store, and I say either all first selected or active first selected. So since my hazer or my fixture 108 is not selected, it's not going to store anything for that fixture. There's your answer.
Great.
Yeah.
I don't actually think I have too many other store option questions. So how about this one? Is it possible to have a view with a layout stored to it, so that way it's a specific layout instead of the last one that I just selected?
Oh yeah, for sure. So we have a layout here in my show, and I think what you're talking about, I only have one layout actually, but I will make another one with the alpha spots. So we'll do that, and then I want one with just the RGB. What is Windows doing? They have washes. So now what that means is that as I toggle through this, every time I go from here to layout, it's coming back to my last selected layout because my layout view is set to link selected. If you want your layout to always be a specific view, notice now, even as I toggle through my layouts, it's staying on this view because I chose a very specific view, the designer life. But if I recall that view, it goes back to link selected. So I don't have any empty views in here, so we'll just delete a couple of these views, one of these views, so I can show you the example. What I would do here is layout view, set it to the specific layout view you want, and store that as your designer layout. Now, it doesn't matter if I toggle through these. This screen is always that, and every time I go there, it's always that. There you go.
Cool. I have a question about the fixture sheet here. How do you get to see your preset types in your fixture sheet? The preset type bar?
I'm assuming this is what you meant.
Yeah, right there.
So, yeah.
So preset control under tools in your little yellow options ball there.
Yeah, I guess this doesn't really make sense on screen 2 because I have the preset type bar here, but if you have an external monitor, touch monitor, you want screen 4 to have this on your fixture sheet, it's just always, sheet options are always going to be in the yellow ball on the top left. And just go through all of those. And cool. If you ever need help with something, you can always tap help and tap on the blue title bar. It actually takes you to the help manual that talks about sheet options, where I'm assuming it's in here somewhere that would tell you about the preset bar.
Well, it's also kind of important. The value layer, effect layer, output layer, that bar that you were using as well, you have to tell the fixture sheet to
Yeah,
that's not default.
That's a layer control bar. And if you don't like scroll bars, you can turn them off. You go to multi-control bars, all these options. Definitely worth. These are all actually documented really well in the help manual. It's definitely worth using on PC at home, just sitting there at your kitchen table, learning what all these options do, try them out until you figure out what it means.
Cool.
Yep.
Ready for the next demonstration? How do you use a temp fader to control effect size?
You start by storing the effect to an executor. So maybe we have that, and we're going to go to a move circle effect, and it's going to be really big. And I got to draw a playback bar so I can show this in action. Why don't we go there? And what I'll do is I'll store that here. Now, what ends up happening, I just stored the effect to that cue. So what ends up happening is this fader doesn't do anything because it's a master fader. You're going to go to your assign window. You're going to go to the function, change this to a temp fader. And now temp is going to control the size of that effect. So as I bring this up, it's 13%, it's a little tiny circle. As I bring this up, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Easy peasy. Got another question?
Yeah, something I'm not sure if you actually did bring up. Your default store options, they're part of the user profile or show file, which
yeah, I covered that in the beginning actually. Was that
making sure
store options are under anything that's under the user tab, you can rest assured are part of your user profile. So since store options are under there, your answer, you automatically have the answer without even asking us.
Let's see.
Just so you know, guys, I mean, guys and gals and anybody watching, some of your questions are a little more complex, not something we can ask in a webinar, but keep asking them with each webinar. We eventually will get to them. Or you can, if you're based in North America, you can always email support@backlighting.com. In your own country, contact your local distributor, or you can always email MA International.
All right, Will, what is the circular copy? It's a good last question, I think, of the webinar.
Circle copy, I suppose, is used to mostly create chasers, but what it does is it, of your selection, it copies the data of one fixture to the next one, and then the last fixture gets copied back to the beginning. So if I just kind of, if we want to see this in action, I would do something like that. And, you know, maybe you're putting your dimmer at 100, but your color values might be spread out. So I might use a line to spread them out a little bit. Now what happens is that I want purple to now be 103. So this would be stored as Q1, but now I want purple to be 103, and then the green moves. So this is what circle copy is effectively for. And I would use it to build a chaser. So I guess I would have to select an executor. So I might select this executor. Remember, this is my first queue, and it deactivated. So now I'm going to go into Tools. I'm going to go to the filter. I only want to be copying mixed color values, just the RGB in this case. And I hit that button, and now you see how it shifted purple from the end back to the beginning, right? And we'd store that as the next queue. I hit circle copy. Now purple is in the second one, so I store that as the next queue. And I rinse and repeat. If you're going to be doing this a lot, you should use a macro, which would be CC plus 1, and then store, and then CC plus 1, and then store, and then CC plus 1, and then store. I'm not going to do it again because we started with purple at the beginning. So now if I go to my executor, I want to make it a chaser, and now I'm going to hit go, and you see how my values are chasing. So that's really where I would use circle copy. Very powerful. Definitely use the filter with circle copy, otherwise you're going to be copying all values of that fixture, and these are all by default not even getting used, so you shouldn't even do that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, everyone. I think that was the last question, right?
Last that we could actually get in this time frame, yes.
All right. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I hope you found it very useful today, and have a nice weekend.
Bye, everybody.
Happy programming.